I want to highlight a couple of guys that are maybe not on people's radars yet, and they received their first market value. Stick with Corinthians first. André, midfielder, 19 years old, 60 million market value, first ever market value, right? That's a high entry, Marcos, for your first ever market value.
Yeah, I mean, how high is the ceiling for these young players, right? Of course, it's very complicated because, as I mentioned at the start of the football calendar here from January to March, these youngsters tend to like gain the spotlight, be under the spotlight, and people are like going crazy. Of course, a lot of it is hype on young players, as we know, but you have to analyze that these guys have a lot of potential. And if a player that young, like 17, 18, 19 years of age, gets to start for a big club like Corinthians, like Flamengo, like Palmeiras, there's something there for you to see. So when you go and analyze André's numbers, for example, he's a brilliant midfielder for a 19-year-old. He really plays senior level football like it's nothing. And it's been the case. There's one of his colleagues, Beno Bidon, is very similar to him. They don't feel pressure. Honestly, if you watch them play, it seems like they've been doing it for years now, and they're like 19, 20-year-old players dominating the midfield battles for Corinthians. So, I mean, André is definitely one to watch. He is linked to AC Milan. There's a bit of a transfer saga going on there because AC Milan wanted to buy him from Corinthians. There was sort of reportedly there was a deal closed around 15 million euro. The Corinthians stepped back. They don't want to sell him that low, if we can consider that low. And they want to develop him a bit more, have him play another year here in Brazil, and maybe in the future sell him for a higher amount of money for maybe AC Milan or another club in Europe, because they know for a fact that he now has the spotlight, and loads of clubs will be looking into him throughout the year. So yeah, I mean that's usually the case with young stars here that tend to shine on the beginning of the year, and if they continue to develop, clubs can always sell them for much higher fees at the end of the year.
I mean, that is a big factor on how we calculate market values. Transfermarkt, we're both area managers, right? We both very actively involved in our respective areas in determining market values. And if we see clubs being interested in players, that is a very big driver in setting those fees or setting the market values on our side.
Yeah, and I mean it's you should always consider what the market is doing in real life. I mean, what transfers are being discussed, what rumors we have surrounding these players, and especially when they are just starting their senior careers, you have to understand that it's difficult. That the less data you have to look into, the more complicated it is to assess these market values, and that's obviously a very important topic here. So in André's case, he played in last year's Série A in Brazil. He didn't receive a market value by December because we understood that he was a special case, and we should analyze him once he had a bit more of football being played at senior level. And it's often the case with these players that we give them time to develop and to really show who they are in senior level. And then we go as high as we can with the market values, and we try to assess them as realistic as we can. So, for example, you see rumors being around 15 million euros for André is obviously related to his market value being 16 million euros, and some other players as well that I'm sure we'll mention. We obviously consider what the market is doing, but we try to analyze what data they have and how much potential they have as well.
Well, that's the next name that I thought was really curious, and you have to help me with the pronunciation. Grêmio's Gabriel Mec. Is it Mec? Mec?
Mec, yeah.
Mec. Okay, like a CH in English or German. 17. He receives his first market value ever. Has played senior football now in the Campeonato Gaúcho, right, which is the regional competition, but also has featured in the Serie A. Attacking midfielder, very interesting profile. You guys opted to go very high here as well with a first ever market value.
Yeah, I mean, Gabriel Mec is another example of a player that we've been watching for quite some time now. And we were sort of like just hoping and expecting him to play at senior level because he has been for a few years been doing great for the youth national team of Brazil. He played last year a few games for Brazil's under 17 team, and he is like a very, very good player. But we sort of need to wait. We sort of need to see what the player is able to do at senior level before we can assess his market value. And we were just waiting for him to play a few games of Serie A, a few games of state championships as well. And now that we've seen how good he's managed at senior level, he's been like nominated man of the match a few times in the Gaúcho this year. He's been doing his first few minutes in the Serie A as well. We thought it was time for him, even if he's only 17, to go and have his first market value. And yeah, I mean, the potential is written inside of those 12 million euros that we gave him. And to be very honest, when you see a guy like that, his first market value on Transfermarkt go that high, usually it means that there's a lot of potential there, but it also means that the player is already been doing well at senior level.
Yeah, I mean, and one of the things that we found in our internal analysis before we going into this round of market value updates around the world is that potential is a big thing that drives market now, right? More so than ever, clubs are willing to pay big fees for players that are maybe still unheard of, right? They're willing to pay for potential, and that is, I think, that when I saw that name. And when we spoke about him for the text that is now online on all the English-speaking sites, that was one example where I thought, yeah, that's a typical case of where potential is really worth a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, just as we spoke a few minutes ago, if you think about it, clubs want to sign Brazilian players, star players from all over the world as soon as they can. So if they want a player that early, so they can bring him to Europe and develop him in their own system, they obviously gonna pay a potential fee or potential tax, let's put it like that, because they are not just buying the player for what he is right now, how he's performing now, but what he could be one day. And clubs selling players will try to push that as high as possible. So if they understand that a player has a high potential, has a high ceiling, they'll try to push his market value and his sale value as high as possible. So market values tend to reflect that, obviously. If a player's ceiling, a player's potential is that high, we need to go that high with its market value as well. And you see the clubs use that in negotiations as well, and they try to sell these young stars as high as they can if they're leaving that early.
Yeah, I mean, it's really fascinating. Before we wrap this up, what are a couple names that we maybe didn't list in the article people should be taking a look on, especially ahead of the World Cup, right? But also as the Brazilian season is now really kicking off, we know that there's going to be, come the summer transfer window, a few names that maybe people didn't even have on the radar. So what kind of names should people pay attention to?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely keep an eye on Breno Bidon from Corinthians as well. He's another top midfielder who's been doing well since he became a professional player for Corinthians. He was doing well at the youth teams as well. And I would keep an eye for the future on players like Del and Juan Pablo from Bahia, two very good forwards who tend to develop, especially when you think that Bahia is under the City Group. They could develop quite well here and join other clubs in Europe and take the next steps with ease there. And yeah, keep an eye on Brazilian strikers. Obviously, those are always under the spotlight in international football. There's another good player to keep an eye on from Palmeiras is Alan, who is a very good midfielder. He can play a bit as a winger as well. He's going to be one for the future. I definitely know that there's teams keeping an eye on him from Europe. He should be joining European football quite soon because he's already 21 years old. Yeah, I mean, I would say nowadays you have to keep an eye out for everyone in the Brazilian league because you have stars all over the place. You have a mix of veterans who come from Europe who have been playing here for a while, and you have these young stars rising up inside of clubs.
Fantastic stuff. Thank you, Marcos. This was great. And yeah, if you want to find this update, it is all over Transfermarkt, whichever domain you prefer, whether it's the Brazilian one, .com, .us, .co.uk, or whichever other language you use, the Brazilian market value update will be already on the site, as we posted this last week. Yeah, great for having you on, Bud, and I'll talk to you very, very soon.